Lord David Frost, it's once again a pleasure to have you with us. And we're now moving on to the subject of Brexit, which is something that you know a great deal about, having been Brexit negotiator under the previous government. So I've got some questions for you, if I may. These really come from our readers and our audience. The Brexit we were promised and which we continue to campaign on, that's Facts for EU and CIBUK and all of our affiliate organisations, hasn't yet been delivered. How committed do you think this government is to a clean and comprehensive Brexit?
I think I would give the Boris Johnson government 8 out of 10, perhaps, for the Brexit we delivered. We did get out when it seemed impossible. We did avoid you remember, the backstop trap that would have kept us in the customs union and the single market. And we did get the free trade agreement that everybody said was impossible or would take 10 years to negotiate. So I think we did well, particularly given the hand we've been delivered. The main weakness is Northern Ireland, obviously, and we should talk about that. But I do think that it's important to have a government that is committed to dealing with the loose ends is not quite the right word, but the remaining unsatisfactory areas and driving through and using the powers that we have returned to Britain in the most effective way possible. And I don't think we've had that. We haven't been energetic enough. And unfortunately, we are left with the Northern Ireland legacy problem in a way that's hamstringing us.
Let's talk about both of those. Let's start with what is known as REUL, the retained EU laws. What's your opinion on repealing EU laws from our statute books, because that has completely changed under the current government?
I think it's a pity the government switched the burden of proof around as it did last year. I think it would have been much better to say, as was the original plan, that everything gets repealed apart from ones you specifically need to save, rather than the other way round. Because now we've got the task of, which we always try to avoid, of going through the statute book, identifying things that need to go, and there's always a lot of resistance and sort of stakeholders and people invested in the current system who don't want to change it. So it makes it more difficult. Doesn't mean it can't be done, and time is short in any case now, obviously. I think there are areas like planning law, environment law, employment law, immigration obviously is another area that we could be more energetic on. But I don't know whether it's going to happen, but I would hope that we put in the manifesto some version of the original scheme and reverse the burden of proof again for the future.
The other issue that you briefly raised there is, again, a big concern for many people, which is the status of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland. So when it comes to the protocol/Windsor framework, what do you think can be done to secure the province's future within the United Kingdom?
Well, I think we've made a big mistake with the Windsor framework. Boris Johnson and I always saw the protocol as a fix that was never going to last, and that's why there were various ways to vote the way out of it. And we I think it's fair to say we're always clear that we're unhappy with it. We never implemented it fully. We always tried to wriggle out of it. And in the end, of course, the Johnson government brought forward the protocol bill that would have overridden it and reunited the country. Now, Rishi Sunak said he was going to carry on with that bill and then has not. And we've got the Windsor framework, which is, it's just tinkering with the original protocol, really. The problem with it is that the change of attitude. Boris, Liz Truss, we wanted to change it. Now we're committed to it. The government says the Windsor framework is a good deal, even though it isn't. It has to defend it. It has to pretend that this arrangement can work. And that's a completely different situation to be in. And I really fear that it's going to entrench the division, entrench a kind of orientation of the Northern Ireland economy back towards the EU and the Republic. And it's going to be much more difficult to unpick all this. But it still must be unpicked. And just this week, Robert Jenrick, the minister who resigned last autumn, and I wrote an article saying it can't last, and it really can't last, and we must keep saying it can't last so that it doesn't become a immovable feature of the current arrangement, and everybody gets used to Northern Ireland being semi-detached. It's a great pity that. I mean, I don't like to blame Theresa May and her team for everything, but they got trapped on the Northern Ireland issue, and they could never find a way out of it. And they agreed to things that we have never been able to wriggle out of since. And it's a great, great pity that Brexit's been hamstrung in this way. Last point on this is that the problem we've got now is that every domestic reform we make in Britain in the single market, customs, areas that are left to the single market in Northern Ireland widens the gap. So there's a tremendous inhibition against doing these things, which again is a great pity. So I'm really, really worried by it, and we must keep saying it's got to change.
Can we just move on to trade, international trade, which is something you know a great deal about? I want to ask you a couple of questions that you might want to amalgamate. How do you think our international trade deals are going? And what about free ports? Where are we on free ports?
I think the trade is a success story, actually. And, we've had a succession of trade ministers since Brexit who have pushed this with Liam Fox and Liz Truss and now Kemi. I think they have focused pretty effectively on the agenda. And, I remember everybody saying the British government doesn't have any trade negotiators, will never be able to negotiate any deals. It's an obvious disaster area. And obviously it hasn't turned out like that at all. We did replicate virtually every one of the deals we had with the EU. Since then, we have negotiated accession to the CPTPP, this big Asia Pacific trade deal that's a huge one, and everyone said we could never get that. We've got a free trade agreement with the EU. We have agreement with Japan, and we're carrying on with this. So I think it's been a success story, actually. The main thing I wish we'd got, and we haven't, obviously, is the US trade deal. Now, unfortunately, the Biden administration isn't interested in doing trade deals with anybody, not just us. So it hasn't happened. But if the opportunity comes back up, then we must try and get it. It's really important.
Let's talk about our coastal communities and fishing. What do you think about restoring our sovereign fishing rights? That was another key Brexit pledge. Where are we, do you think, as far as securing our territorial waters?
Obviously, we came under quite a lot of criticism for the fishing deal at the end of 2020, and we did think very hard about whether it was something we could sign up to. What it does do is gives us full rights back over our territorial waters halfway through 2026, and at the time that seemed a long way off. Obviously it's beginning to come up quite fast now. We did get more access in the transition period than we'd had under the Brexit, and I think that is benefiting coastal communities overall. But the crucial thing is that when this moment in 2026 comes, we do take back control. We do have full freedom over our territorial waters and to negotiate freely with the EU. And if we wish to, we can exclude all EU fishing from those areas. And, we may or may not wish to do that because we want access to some EU fishing grounds as well. We want to be able to land catchers in the EU as well. So there's always a deal to be done there, but it's not true to say that we gave them away. We agreed a slightly longer transition than we would really have wanted, but it comes in the end.